All right, now we'll be back from the break. As I was saying, that we are continuing with our topic of discussion regarding private schools business, but pretty much now our interest is entirely on the proprietors, the owners of it. And I have a new face, not new to the viewers' eyes, but of course a new one on today's topic. And this is none other than Mr. Christopher Chiwanuka-Kawesa, who's the Communications Director, Proprietors of Private Education Institutions in Uganda. You're most welcome. Please say hello to the viewers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sonko. I would like to bring you greetings, dear viewers. First of all, to thank Smart 24 TV for a wonderful job being done to educate Ugandans on a number of issues relating to business success.
Okay.
I wish to bring greetings to the members of the Proprietors of Private Education Institutions Association in Uganda, beginning with our beloved chairman, Mr. Mike Chironde, Mr. Bukenya, Mr. Mugwanya, Honorable Kakemba, and others, of course. We thank you very much for having put us together to be able to move this far in spite of the challenges in the education industry. I also take privilege, Mr. Sonko, to greet my dear head teacher, Mr. Peter Nangoti of Chocha Parent Secondary School in Mitiana, and all your staff, and Madam Joelia Namuiga, the administrative officer and resident director. Thank you for working so hard to ensure that we can be able to conclude the terms, the very long terms, like term 2, with very minimal resources.
Okay, and many thanks for joining us again. I would now want us to get into the issue of school proprietors. Yeah. I believe the last time we had you here on the show was discussing how private schools can recover. Now, today, we're looking at the business owners who have apparently decided to hike school fees, because a report that was revealed by the New Vision a week ago is that schools will apparently increase school fees by 10%, private schools. And we can still say that is a viable call, because we all understand the economic crisis in the country. But with the interactions you've had with the proprietors, where do you believe is the reason as to why they're pushing for this?
First of all, the aspect of increasing school fees by 10%, probably it's a kind of a statistical number established by New Vision, depending on how far their research went. I also am yet to know whether actually their research was basically on private schools or it was holistic, covering government-aided and private schools.
It was mainly private.
It was mainly private. At least my own school was not among them. And incidentally, I have not even intimated to increase school fees yet. Much as we are not the type that actually charge very high school fees. We are not. But the aspect of school fees rise is inevitable. It is cost pushed. It is cost pushed in the sense that if you find, like the report which I saw yesterday in New Vision, where Minister Honorable Kaduchu came out and said increasing school fees is not the issue. The issue is the arrangement to increase the school fees. And I saw in that very article that certain schools had agreed on increasing school fees. As far as PIAO is concerned, we have not convened any meeting with our members on such a matter, and therefore I wonder which schools could have met. In my understanding, these could be schools like the government-aided schools that could have met. But if it is true that they also find that they need to increase school fees, when by law they are entitled to a share from the taxpayers' money through government. I'll give you examples. According to the Education Act of Uganda, government schools and government-aided schools are entitled to receiving trained teachers allocated by government. These teachers to be paid by government, their salaries and allowances. Also the staff who are declared or registered or who are employed by those schools, both government and government aided, also to be paid. They are entitled to receiving statutory grants. They are also entitled to receiving scholastic materials, educational materials, and they are also receiving capital development inputs from government.
Okay.
Now, on top of that, they charge school fees.
Okay.
And on top of that, they feel that the school fees they charge is not adequate. They want to increase.
Okay.
What is the rationale of thinking that a private school that does not receive such subsidization from government cannot increase school fees? How will it operate? There are only two ways. Either these schools increase school fees to a certain point, one, that is affordable by their clients, the parents, and two, that's just adequate to help them to overcome the cost burdens in running the school, or otherwise they close.
Okay.
There is no choice.
Okay.
Because government has indicated very clearly that will not, at least as of now, is not ready to support private schools.
Okay. Mr. Chirabira earlier on said that they've not got into any engagement with the ministry so far, because every time they've tried to get into these engagements and have discussions, the ministry only says, do not decrease, rather do not increase the school fees. That's the final say. So there are no plans, there is literally no answers for them. Have you had any engagements with the ministry as the association that takes over the proprietors of private education institutions?
We have had similar engagements like Mr. Chirabira has mentioned in the past. But since this challenge of school fees, or this challenge of costs, the rise in fuel prices, the rise in beans prices, and posho prices, and other things. Since it came, especially, we have been hit very strongly beginning term 2, which has just been concluded. We've also not come out to discuss anything with the Minister of Education, because we know that they are also incapacitated as a ministry. It is the government that is supposed to advise the ministry what to do as far as private schools are concerned.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge and understanding, the ministry controls private schools in regulating them, in giving them policies to follow, in prohibiting them from doing certain things, and even they are very fast at saying don't increase the school fees, rather than saying come and we sit at a table and find out where are your financial challenges. I think that's where we are having a problem. So going to the Ministry of Education to sit down and discuss with them issues of revenue for running private schools, I think is out of question for discussion.
All right. And now let's also get more of this one. Now, the legislators also complained about the hiking of schools, and yesterday in a report we had here, most of them were actually saying they shouldn't be. I would actually ask my producer to have me that footage of where the legislators were. We did have that running yesterday, where legislators were actually saying it is not right for this to happen, for school fees to be hiked, and then the others were saying even in government institutions, some government institutions are increasing the school fees. Now, also, is it because, is it a deliberate move, if I may ask, for the proprietors to at least also gain from the current economic crisis?
I don't think it's really a question of gaining.
Okay.
Can I also, much as I'm not part of the parliament, but since these people represent people like me in parliament,
very true.
Can I also pose this question? Is it right for fuel prices to increase? Is it right for food prices, beans, maize, potatoes, cassava, and all the things that we need in schools to maintain the schools? Is it right for them to increase? And if they increase at no increase in revenue on the side of the schools, is it right that schools should suffocate the children?
Okay.
I think let them look at it from that point of view. Is it the school fees is it the rise in the school fees that has caused a general rise in the prices in the market? Or it is the other way around? Can't Parliament, sitting together with the executive, consider possible macroeconomic solutions?
All right.
Because this is a macroeconomic dilemma now.
Okay, education terms. Now let's first have a clip of this particular one where legislators were saying increment, or were against the increment of school fees, saying parents are not ready to pay for this, or parents from their constituencies. Let's have this rerun again, but our conversation still continues. Stick around.
Government-aided schools. And when you look at the structure, it has 28 items that are indicated on it. When you look at these 28 items, for example, there is
Honorable, we don't have much time, please just go on.
So my request, therefore, as I talk about the secondary school fees structure, is to ask government to standardize it. Because if you're having 28 items on a school fees structure, for example, board of governor fees of 598,000 and a school with 1,000 students, that's 598 million going into just the board of governors. You look at school uniform.
It is true, given the escalating prices of commodities, including fees, food, and many other items, including scholasticas, the Ministry of Education is not exceptional. True that schools have had conference and they plan to increase school fees due to the rising prices of commodities. And I want to inform this House that my ministry, as by law, the Education Act of 2008, mandated to form a statutory instrument that regulates the school fees and other school-related matters. Colleagues, as we pledge here sometimes back,
Let the minister first. Yeah.
The ministry has already put in place the statutory instrument which is being reviewed by the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. And in the meantime, before we bring out the instrument to be laid on the table here, there are procedures in the ministry for any school to increase the school fees through the Board of Governors, through the School Management Committee, which have got the representative of parents and other stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I want to inform my colleague that indeed the issue of school fees is real and the increment is real, but as a ministry, we already taken measures to ensure the school fees are within the framework for the parents as approved by the Board of Governors or by the School Management Committee. As far as the issue of low enrollment for secondary education...
But Honourable Minister, this is a matter which can run out of hand, and we don't even satisfy ourselves. We don't satisfy ourselves. So, Committee on Education, the document presented, tabled on the floor, please take it up and report back to the House in 2 weeks' time. Committee on Education.
That is what was happening from the Legislative House, Legislative Assembly, Parliament, as they were discussing the education. And my guest here was pretty much listening to what the Minister of State was mentioning about. And I want to understand, she says that the education sector is no exception regarding the current economic crisis, which is very true.
Which is true. I personally agree with the minister because all what she has mentioned is actually part of the legislative framework that governs the education industry in Uganda. We are also operating under the Education Act of 2008.
Okay.
And all the rules and regulations thereof concern us as well.
Okay.
However, on top of that, we find ourselves that we have to incur more statutory expenses than our counterparts in government-aided schools and public schools. For instance, in second term, it is private schools, primary and secondary. I will talk for those for now.
Okay.
Primary and secondary private schools, their candidates were required and will always be required to pay examination fees to UNEP.
Yes.
I want UNEP to come forward and say government schools and government-aided schools also pay, in spite of government giving them support. You get the point? This money, UNEB tells the schools, the private school owners, don't collect it from parents. It's you. Don't increase school fees. Chiyocha Parents charges 500,000 shillings school fees. That 500,000 school is where all the costs that are related to running the school are taken from. Now, a senior 4 student is required, other than the 500,000 shillings, is required to pay 164,000 shillings for UNEB. And senior 6 candidate, 186,000 shillings to UNEB. Now, if really 186,000 is not money, I wonder how it will fit within a budget of 500,000 for a term. Okay. Now, if we are under obligation to pay all that money, and we have done it without default, it has eaten into the funding of the school, which we collect as school fees. But on top of that, this particular parent who doesn't have the money, when I ask him, like me, who is based in the village, to sell me beans, he says, but he doesn't want the school fees to increase. But he's ready to sell me the beans at a higher price. You get the point? When you look at transport, these children, the same parent, what is this parent going to do when he has to pay transport fares, which have moved from 10,000 to 20,000 in order to take the child to school? Is that a school fee? No. Exactly. So there are so many other related costs, which I think really the House should take up kind of holistically. Let us look at the economy as a whole, and also look at the sufficiency. I don't mind regulating school fees, but regulate the school fees the way you regulate the national budget. Why does the national budget always come back and government says we need supplementary funds, supplementary budgets? It means that somehow down the road, the costs have changed. Certain things have really changed. Why does the government every new year say we have now increased our budget this year from X trillion to Z trillion? Meaning that actually the market prices, the market factors are compelling government also to increase the budget for funding their programs. Therefore, let Parliament look at it from that point of view. Otherwise, we are going to suffocate the education industry.
All right. And our conversations do continue immediately after the break. Stick around now. After the break, we will be looking at the way forward under which the private school proprietors can find solutions for themselves first before the government steps in. Stick around.